Happy Halloween and welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. This is Baroness T'Challa von Schnoodle, who is very lucky. Let's talk about books. This month, we have been talking about banned books. Every video this month has been about a different banned book to celebrate Banned Books Week, which was at the end of September. And I can't believe we're already at the end of the month. Happy Halloween if you celebrate it. And I hope you've been enjoying this series as much as I have. But since it's Halloween, today we're going to talk about a classic horror novel, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I also want to show off my cloth-bound classic, which I just purchased. Isn't that pretty? For some reason, I didn't have a copy of Frankenstein. I don't know why, but I corrected that. So here we are. Now, this is a pretty famous story. If you haven't read the book, you've probably seen one or more of the many adaptations of it. But just so we're all talking about the same story, I'll give a quick rundown. In this story, we are following a young medical student called Victor Frankenstein, who has become obsessed with the idea of creating life. Because muscles move with electrical impulses of a kind, he has a theory that if he can assemble a human body and run enough electrical current through it, he can make a living person. Even if you haven't seen the movies, I'm sure you've seen the classic clip, "It's alive!" And of course, it's not a spoiler to say that Frankenstein is successful. He does create a person, and that person is not quite what he expected. And so he rejects him. So Frankenstein has created this man out of essentially spare parts dug up from graveyards, which, by the way, in the 1800s, it was a pretty lucrative business to dig up corpses from cemeteries and sell them to medical schools so that they would have bodies to work on. So Frankenstein thinks nothing of digging up corpses or buying corpses from grave robbers so that he can assemble this person. And he makes his man huge. He is tall, he is broad-shouldered, he is muscular, and even though his body is that of an adult or many adults, he is in fact a child. He's literally has no knowledge or almost no knowledge, and he has to learn everything. And his first act is one of violence, because being born is a violent act. And so ultimately Frankenstein decides that this was a mistake, and he sends the creature away, and then the creature is wandering around the countryside trying to figure himself out. This is a gorgeous novel filled with philosophical discussions about what it means to be human, what is the responsibility of creating life, and can a human really play God? What are the implications of that? So it's about humanity, it's about the soul, but it's also about how science can be misused if you're not thinking about the consequences. This book was published in 1818. One defining characteristic of the 1800s was this tension between religion and science. And Mary Shelley certainly drew upon that for her story. As humans were making more and more advances in all branches of science, it led people to question whether religion was still relevant. And of course, 200 years later, we have both science and religion still, and they more or less coexist. But there was a lot of tension there. Science was so new and was so rapidly evolving. So that tension led to a lot of concerns about this book, and it actually has been banned and challenged since the 1800s. This book includes the death of a child, which is a scene that really concerned censors, and the deformity of human nature and appearance really upset a Western society that in the 1800s equated beauty with godliness. But the biggest complaints about this book really have to do with the idea of Frankenstein playing God, of him creating life. Many religious individuals and groups have said that this conflicts directly with their faith, that only God can create life, humans cannot. Never mind that this whole story is a warning against doing such things, against attempting to achieve such things. That message and that nuance gets lost when people are reading sections out of context, when people are not finishing the story or basing their entire understanding of this complex novel on streamlined adaptations of it. And I am not against the film versions of Frankenstein. like in general. I enjoy film adaptations. I enjoy storytelling in all of its forms. A filmmaker has to pick and choose which themes they're going to emphasize, and not all of them emphasize that portion of this novel. Some do, but like all of the classic movie monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, the werewolf, like they've all become symbols bigger than their original stories. And in our pop culture awareness, a lot of these characters have become caricatures, and that's okay. I don't think that's by itself a bad thing. But when you are judging the book that is the source of those stories, I think it's really important to read it, to understand it, not to take that cardboard cutout or the Spirit Halloween sexy Dr. Frankenstein costume and say, oh, well, that's the story. We're reducing it to a couple of memes. It doesn't do the story justice, and it's not an accurate representation of what you're challenging. And as with all of the books that we've discussed this month, it's okay not to like them. If you don't like this book, I get it. If it's not your thing, you don't like horror, you don't like classics, whatever, that's fine. But I think understanding it before you try to take it off of a shelf is so important. And if you've been around this month, you will know by now, I am very much against pulling any book off of the shelf, particularly one as entertaining and also thought-provoking as Frankenstein. So let me know in the comments, have you read Frankenstein? Do you correct people when they refer to the creature as Frankenstein instead of the doctor? I won't say I've never done that. And also, let me know what you think of this series. I've had a lot of fun doing this. This is the last video in the banned book series for 2024. I'm definitely interested in feedback, and I'm going back to weekly videos, at least for the rest of this year, but I am looking for ideas for special projects like this one. And either way, I will see you in the next one.